Hello everyone and welcome back to Dreadline Stories. I know many of you use these videos to fall asleep, so before you drift off, I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video. I hadn't seen my sister Hannah in almost a year, so when she suggested we do a little road trip to reconnect, just us, no boyfriends, no distractions, I jumped at it. She planned the whole thing, a drive up the Blue Ridge Parkway through Virginia into West Virginia, stopping at tiny towns along the way, staying in little mom-and-pop motels. It sounded perfect. The first day was exactly what I needed. We played old playlists from high school, stopped at roadside stands for boiled peanuts and homemade fudge, laughed until our stomachs hurt. But the second day, that's when it changed. Somewhere past Roanoke, Hannah pulled off the main road onto a winding side route that cut through dense woods. The trees grew so close they almost formed a tunnel overhead. "You sure this is the right way?" I asked. She smiled. "Trust me. I found this old place online, said it has killer mountain views and nobody around for miles. Total hidden gem." About 20 minutes later, we rolled up on a clearing with a derelict gas station and a diner that looked like it hadn't served a customer in decades. There was a car parked outside, an old Buick, paint peeling, one door hanging slightly open. "Maybe it's still open," Hannah said, way too hopeful. We stepped inside the diner. The air was stale and heavy with mildew. Red vinyl booths split open like old scars, a long counter scattered with coffee-stained menus. No one behind the counter. No sound at all except for a faint buzzing, a ceiling fan struggling to turn overhead. Then from somewhere in the kitchen, we heard a soft thump. Hannah froze, her hand clutching my arm. "Maybe it's an animal," I whispered. She nodded, but her face was pale. We backed out slowly, trying not to make any noise. Outside, it was even quieter than before. The trees seemed to crowd in closer, the shadows deeper. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach twist. The old Buick had moved. It was now parked at a slightly different angle, front end pointed toward the road, like someone had repositioned it while we were inside. "Get in the car," I hissed. Hannah didn't argue. We jumped in, slammed the doors, and took off back the way we came. Except the road didn't look the same. Where before, there was a wide gravel shoulder, now thick underbrush crowded right up to the asphalt. The trees seemed taller, the sky darker, and when I looked in the mirror, I could see the Buick following us, maybe 20 yards back, keeping perfect pace. "Hannah, don't stop for anything, okay?" She nodded, eyes locked straight ahead. That's when my phone buzzed. I snatched it up, desperate for a signal, a map, anything. But there was just one new notification, a photo. I opened it. It was a picture of me and Hannah, taken from behind as we stood inside that diner, and in the reflection of the cracked mirror behind the counter, I could see a man standing right behind us, smiling. Hannah must have seen my face. "What is it? What's wrong?" I couldn't even get the words out. I just shoved the phone at her. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through the photo, breath hitching. Who took this? There was nobody else in there." I didn't answer. I couldn't, because out the back window, I could see the Buick was even closer now, maybe 10 feet behind us, its headlights off, coasting silently. Suddenly the road curved, and Hannah nearly lost control, tires screeching on loose gravel. When we straightened out, the Buick was gone, not pulled off to the side, not slowing down, just vanished. We didn't say a word after that. We drove for what felt like hours until finally the forest thinned out and we burst into open farmland. There was a battered sign for a town called Dover Hollow, and we almost cried in relief. The main street was tiny, a hardware store, a diner, a real one this time, lights on, people inside, and an old general store with a bell that jingled as we rushed in. The guy behind the counter looked like he'd been working there since the place opened. I tried to sound calm. "Hey, have you seen anyone driving a pale green Buick around here? Older guy, maybe?" He gave us a long, measuring look. Then he shook his head slowly. "No, ma'am. You two ain't the first to come in asking about that car, though." Hannah clutched the counter. "What do you mean?" He scratched at his chin. "Been folks passing through here for decades saying the same thing. Always that old Buick, always someone trailing him through these hills." Then he dropped his voice. "Never seen nobody actually catch it, but I've seen people come back days later walking right down this road looking all hollowed out, like something inside 'em's been scooped out and left behind." Hannah and I exchanged a look. "We just want to get back to the highway," I whispered. He nodded, scribbled a crude map on a napkin. "Follow this exactly. Don't take any turnoffs, even if your GPS tells you to. That thing ain't much help out here." We thanked him and got back in the car. For the next hour, we followed that napkin map like it was the only thing keeping us alive. The forest seemed to lean away from the road this time, the air a little clearer. When we finally spotted an overhead sign for I-64, Hannah burst into tears. But as we merged onto the highway, I glanced at my side mirror. For just a heartbeat, I saw the Buick there too, keeping pace in the next lane. Then I blinked, and it was gone. It's been months since that trip. We're both home now, trying to move on. But sometimes, late at night, I'll get a text. No number, just unknown. When I open it, it's always a photo of me, taken from somewhere just behind my shoulder. I've never liked long drives at night. Something about the way the darkness swallows everything beyond your headlights just feels wrong. But my roommate Eric talked me into a cross-country haul from Oregon to Colorado, hauling his aunt's old furniture in a rented van. It was me, Eric, and his cousin Becca, squeezed in the cab with junk food and energy drinks to keep us awake. Things started to go weird somewhere in Idaho. We were supposed to merge onto I-15, but the GPS glitched out, showing us a blank grid with a blinking arrow floating in nowhere. Eric cussed at it, but Becca just laughed. "It's a straight shot east anyway. These roads all connect." So we kept going. An hour later, I realized we hadn't seen another car, or a single sign for gas, food, or even a mile marker. Worse, the road itself had narrowed. What started as clean asphalt was now cracked and weedy, with faded paint lines vanishing under the dirt. Finally, up ahead, we saw lights. 2 tiny dots bobbing on the shoulder. As we got closer, I saw it was a beat-up sedan parked half off the road. Its hood was up, and a man stood next to it, waving us down with frantic energy. Eric slowed. "Dude, what are you doing?" I hissed. "We can't just leave someone stranded out here," he said. Becca didn't look so sure, but rolled down her window. The guy jogged over, sweaty and out of breath. In the glow of our headlights, he looked rough, like he hadn't slept in days. "Thank God," he panted. "Can you give me a ride? My car just died and there's no cell signal anywhere." I didn't want to say yes. Every hair on my neck was standing up. But Eric, being Eric, just unlocked the back door. "Hop in. We're headed east. We'll drop you at the next town." The man climbed in with a weak smile. "Bless you. Name's Roy." I introduced myself, but Becca just gave a small wave, staring hard at Roy in the mirror. 15 minutes later, Roy started mumbling to himself. At first I thought he was praying. Then I realized he was whispering numbers. 17, 17, 17. Then a pause. 18. Then he started over. Eric tried to lighten the mood. "Everything okay back there, man?" Roy didn't answer, just kept whispering. Becca squeezed my hand. Her nails were like ice. That's when I noticed the road. It had changed. What was cracked asphalt was now smooth and black, almost oily looking, stretching dead straight into pitch darkness. No lines, no signs, nothing. "Eric, did we miss a turn somewhere?" I whispered. He didn't answer. He was staring ahead, eyes wide, hands locked on the wheel. That's when Roy leaned forward between our seats, breath hot on my neck. "It's almost time," he whispered. Eric didn't even blink. It was like he couldn't. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel, eyes locked on that endless black ribbon of road. I grabbed his arm. "Eric, hey, you have to stop the van." Nothing. He just kept driving. Behind us, Roy started laughing, low and breathy at first, then building into this hoarse, almost wet-sounding cackle. Becca twisted around, voice shaking. "What's so funny?" Roy leaned back, wiped tears from his eyes. It's just, none of you knew, did you? That it picks someone, that it always does. I turned in my seat. What the hell are you talking about? His grin was enormous now, teeth dark in the passing flashes of dashboard light. The road, it picks. Every so often it gets hungry, calls someone out here, leaves them a little gift. No phone signal, no other cars, nowhere else to go. He tapped the glass with one cracked fingernail, and then it takes. Eric let out a strangled gasp. The van swerved, tires skidding on that slick black surface. I grabbed the wheel, trying to steady us. Eric, look at me. You're okay. Just slow down. He shook his head wildly. I can't. I don't know how to. The pedals are gone. The road's not letting me stop. Becca suddenly screamed. Outside her window, something was pacing us in the dark. A tall shape, long arms that nearly dragged the ground, head twisted sideways. Every few seconds, it loped closer, its face brushing the glass. I only saw it for an instant, eyes that were empty sockets, mouth stretched into a black pit. Then, the van slammed to a stop so hard, all our heads cracked forward. The road ended, just like that. Ahead of us was nothing but a solid wall of trees, dense and dark. Roy sighed, oddly content. Looks like it picked you after all, Eric. Before we could move, he grabbed the door handle and slipped out. I watched him walk around to Eric's side, pull open the driver's door. He leaned in, whispered something in Eric's ear, and Eric just stood up and stepped out, calm as could be. Together they walked toward the trees. Eric! Becca screamed, but he never looked back. The shadows swallowed them both. We waited hours, calling his name, before finally driving off. The road somehow returning under our tires, gravel and potholes like before. When we hit civilization again, there was no sign of Roy. No record of anyone by that name reported missing. And Eric? They found the van abandoned on the shoulder weeks later, but no trace of him. Sometimes, when I close my eyes at night, I hear the road, calling. I've always thought the best part of a road trip was the randomness of it. Stopping at weird roadside diners, discovering little antique shops in towns no one's ever heard of. So when my cousin Lila proposed a last-minute weekend drive from Illinois down through Kentucky, I was all in. Her boyfriend Drew came along too, crammed in the back of my car with an old Polaroid camera, determined to document every mile. Things were normal for the first few hours. We grabbed gas station snacks, argued over playlists, laughed about Lila's paranoid fear of getting ticks in her socks whenever we pulled over. But around dusk, somewhere deep in rural Kentucky, Drew spotted a faded wooden sign pointing off the main highway. Scott's Hollow, 3 miles. It was scrawled with a little painted heart underneath. Come on, he said. Bet there's some tiny diner or weird local landmark we can check out. So we took the turn. The road narrowed quickly into cracked asphalt, lined with tangled hedges. I could feel Lila's nervous energy from the passenger seat. You sure this is a good idea? It's getting dark. But Drew was already snapping pictures through the side window. This is how all the best adventures start. A mile in, we hit fog, thick, low-hanging, like smoke pouring across the ground. My headlights barely cut through it. Then we passed something that made my skin crawl. A bicycle lay in the ditch, half crushed, its front wheel still spinning slowly. No rider, no footprints. Let's just turn around, Lila said, voice cracking. But the road was too narrow, with deep gullies on either side. I kept going, hoping it would open up soon. Suddenly, Drew leaned forward between the seats. Wait, look. Through the fog, an old general store appeared. Its windows were dark, but a cracked neon sign above the door still flickered open. I slowed, rolling past. As we did, something moved in the window, a pale face pressed up against the glass, eyes wide and unblinking. Lila gasped, grabbing my arm so hard her nails dug into my skin. I didn't stop. I pressed the gas and we kept moving. A minute later, we passed a wooden sign half buried in the weeds. It was identical to the one we'd seen by the highway. Scott's Hollow, 3 miles. My stomach dropped. It's like we're driving in circles, Lila whispered. Drew tried to laugh it off. It's just country roads. They all loop back on each other. But he didn't sound convinced. When I checked the rearview mirror, my blood turned to ice. Down the road behind us, half shrouded in fog, was the same general store, neon sign still blinking, and standing in front of it were 3 figures watching us drive away. I didn't say anything at first. I just gripped the wheel tighter, trying to steady my breathing, but Lila must have seen my face. "What is it? What did you see?" I swallowed hard. "The store. It's behind us. Same sign, same building, and there were people standing there, watching." Silence filled the car. Even Drew didn't have a joke ready. We drove on in tense quiet, hoping the road would eventually spit us back out onto the highway. But instead, it twisted deeper, the fog growing so thick it felt like we were floating through it. Then, just up ahead, we saw lights. It was a small gas station, almost identical to the last one we'd passed hours ago on the interstate. Same grimy windows, same crooked sign, but it wasn't abandoned. Inside, through the greasy glass, we could see a man behind the counter. His head was bowed, reading something. "Maybe he can give us directions," Lila whispered. It felt wrong. Everything inside me screamed to keep driving, but Drew was already opening his door. "I'll just ask real quick." He slipped inside while we sat there, engine idling. Minutes passed. Too many. Finally, I muttered, "I'm going in." Lila grabbed my hand. "Hurry." Inside, the place smelled of stale oil and something sweeter underneath. The man behind the counter didn't look up, didn't even seem to breathe. Drew stood in front of him, Polaroid camera hanging limp at his side. His eyes were wide and tears streamed down his cheeks, but he didn't blink or move. "Drew?" I stepped closer. Suddenly, the man behind the counter lifted his head. His eyes were milky white, no pupils at all. His mouth split into an enormous, unnatural grin that cut nearly to his ears. He rasped one word, "Stay." Drew let out a choked sob. Then he lifted the camera, aimed it right at me, and pressed the shutter. There was a blinding flash, and for a split second, I wasn't in the gas station anymore. I was outside, standing on the cracked road, fog curling around my legs. The general store loomed across from me, its neon sign buzzing, and all around me stood dozens of figures, their faces slack and eyes hollow. They began to close in. When my vision cleared, I was back in the gas station. Drew was gone. So was the man behind the counter. Only the Polaroid lay on the floor. I picked it up with trembling hands. It showed the 3 of us, me, Lila, and Drew, standing in front of the general store, smiling, arms around each other like we'd lived there all our lives. I ran out to the car. Lila was gone. Just an empty seat. I've been driving ever since, down endless fog-choked roads, hoping to break free. But every sign still reads the same. Scott's Hollow, 3 miles. And I think it's only a matter of time before someone else finds my car, door wide open, with nothing inside but a Polaroid. We were halfway through Kansas when I realized we'd made a mistake. It was me, my older brother Kyle, his fiancée Marcy, and our friend Devin. We were driving from Colorado to St. Louis for a wedding, trying to save time by cutting through endless country back roads. For the first few hours it was fine, nothing but yellow fields, old barns, and occasional grain silos. But around dusk, the sky got weird. Heavy clouds rolled in, hanging low and purple, like bruises stretching across the horizon. Devin pointed out the window. "Is that smoke?" At first I thought he was right. A thin gray haze drifted across the road, smelling faintly of something burned. We figured it was a brush fire somewhere nearby until we came to a crossroads with an old bullet-riddled sign that read, "Marrow Creek, 6 miles. Kyle was driving. He shrugged. Shortcut. Might as well try it. The road narrowed quickly, flanked by walls of cornstalks so tall they seemed to trap us. I watched them pass in the side mirror, feeling oddly like we were being swallowed up. About a mile in, we saw a rusted pickup truck sitting abandoned off to the side. Its door was open, interior stripped down to wires and torn leather. Marcy laughed nervously. Classic horror movie setup right there. Devin knocked on the window. "Don't say that. You'll jinx us." 20 minutes later, we rolled into what must have been Marrow Creek, or what was left of it. There were only a handful of buildings, a collapsed church, a general store with shattered windows and a row of boarded-up houses. We didn't see a single person, but weirdly, the gas station sign was still lit, buzzing faintly in the gloom. We pulled in to see if there was anyone inside. The station looked like it hadn't seen a fresh coat of paint since the 1950s. As we stepped out, Devin nudged my shoulder. "Hey, do you hear that?" It was faint, almost carried on the wind. A woman's voice, humming a slow, sweet tune. We peered around the corner of the building. That's when we saw her. Standing in the doorway of the abandoned general store was an old woman in a long dress, head tilted slightly, smiling right at us, and she was still humming. Kyle called out, trying to sound friendly. "Hey ma'am, is this place open? We're just a bit lost." The woman didn't stop smiling, or humming. She just lifted her hand and crooked a single finger, beckoning us to come closer. I grabbed Kyle's arm. "Number, we're leaving." But when we turned back toward the SUV, Devin was already halfway across the lot, eyes fixed on her like he was in a trance. Devin didn't even look back at us. He kept walking, hands dangling loosely at his sides like he was sleepwalking. Kyle shouted his name and ran after him, Marcy right behind. I hesitated for a second. Something deep in my gut told me not to go near that store. But I couldn't just stand there. By the time I caught up, Devin had already stepped inside. The door creaked open, swallowing him in darkness. The interior was colder than outside. Dust coated everything in a thick gray layer, shelves sagging under the weight of forgotten cans and boxes. But the worst part was the smell. It was like wet soil mixed with copper, sharp enough to sting my nose. In the middle of the aisle, Devin stood completely still, staring at something we couldn't see. Marcy whispered, "Devin, come on, we have to go." He didn't move. Kyle stepped closer, reached out to grab his shoulder, and then Devin spun around so fast it knocked Kyle back. His eyes were wide and glassy, pupils blown out so there was barely any color left. He was grinning, but it wasn't right. His teeth were too clenched, the corners of his mouth twitching unnaturally. Then he spoke, in a voice that sounded half like Devin and half like someone else. "She says you can stay too." I grabbed Marcy's hand and bolted. We ran out into the lot, feet slipping on gravel. Behind us, I heard Devin laughing, high-pitched and broken, echoing off the storefronts. Kyle caught up a second later, breathless and shaking. "Get in the car, now." As we peeled out, I looked back through the rear window. Devin stood at the edge of the lot, still grinning. That old woman next to him, her hand resting on his shoulder like she owned him. And lining the street behind them, spilling out from between houses and doorways, were dozens of people. Men, women, even kids, all gray-skinned and hollow-eyed, all smiling that same impossible smile. We didn't stop driving until we hit the main highway again, miles away. Only then did we pull over to breathe. Kyle tried calling Devin's phone over and over, but it went straight to voicemail. Weeks later, when we finally worked up the nerve to tell the police, they said there was no such town on any maps, no Marrow Creek, no old gas station. But sometimes, late at night when my phone's screen is dark, I'll catch a glimpse of something reflected behind me. A pale face, grinning just over my shoulder. It was supposed to be a cheap little adventure. 3 days on the road, camping wherever we found a spot. There were 5 of us crammed into Ben's battered old SUV, me, Ben, his girlfriend Casey, and our college friends Jordan and Mia. None of us were hardcore outdoorsy types. The plan was more about beers by the fire and laughing at how bad we were at setting up tents. We decided to take the long way through Arizona, a stretch of cracked highway that felt like driving across another planet. The landscape was gorgeous but empty. Miles of dusty plains and lonely hills. About 2 hours past Flagstaff, we spotted a hand-painted sign, Pinto Creek Campground, 12 miles. Perfect. We hadn't seen another car for nearly an hour, and everyone was getting antsy to stop, so we turned off onto a narrow side road. It was little more than a strip of gravel, winding through low desert scrub. 10 miles in, we found what might once have been a campground. A circle of blackened fire pits, an old metal water pump, and some rotting picnic tables. We shrugged, close enough. As the sun dropped, we set up our tents, built a fire, and cracked open a cooler. For a while, it was exactly what we wanted. Cheap beer, bad ghost stories, everyone laughing. But around midnight, it changed. It started with a sound, faint at first, like something scraping against rock. Mia froze mid-sentence. "Did you guys hear that?" Ben pointed his flashlight toward the nearest boulder. The light jittered across dusty stones and desert grass, but there was nothing there. "Probably just a jackrabbit," Jordan muttered. But he didn't sound convinced. The scraping came again, closer this time, circling just beyond the edge of our firelight. Then a low voice, hoarse, barely above a whisper. "Leave." We all jumped up. Ben swung the flashlight wildly. "Who's out there?" "We're armed," he lied. Nothing answered. The desert was deathly still. Then Casey gasped and pointed. In the sand, just beyond the light, were footprints, bare footprints, long and narrow, leading around our campsite in a wide circle. They weren't there when we set up camp. Jordan wanted to pack up immediately, but we were drunk, tired, and honestly half convinced it was some messed up prank by locals. We decided to wait until first light. I lay awake in the tent next to Ben, staring at the nylon ceiling, listening to the crackle of dying coals. That's when I heard it again, closer than ever, right outside the tent wall. "Leave." I didn't even wait to warn the others. I unzipped the tent, scrambled out into the cold sand, and shone my phone light around wildly. Nothing, just empty desert. But the footprints were everywhere now, weaving between our tents, circling the dead fire, leading off into the darkness. Ben stumbled out after me, rubbing his eyes. "What the hell are you doing?" I grabbed his arm. It was right outside. It said leave again. I swear to God. He looked around, saw the footprints, and all the color drained from his face. By the time we woke up Jordan, Mia, and Casey, nobody needed convincing. We packed in record time, shoving tents and sleeping bags into the SUV without bothering to fold anything. The road out seemed darker than before. We drove with high beams slicing through the scrub, looking for that same gravel turnoff that had brought us in. After about 15 minutes, Casey leaned forward between the seats. Shouldn't we have hit the main road by now? We hadn't seen the turnoff. In fact, we hadn't seen anything, just more of the same empty desert. Ben slowed to a crawl. "Are we driving in circles?" Jordan pulled out his phone. No signal. Same with mine. Same with Casey's. That's when Mia spoke up, voice barely a whisper. "Look behind us." We all twisted around. Maybe 50 yards back, just at the edge of the tail lights, was a figure, tall, thin, standing completely still in the middle of the road. Even from that distance, I could see the pale of its skin. It didn't move. Ben punched the gas. The SUV fishtailed, then caught, tearing down the gravel. But every time we came over a rise or curved around a bend, it was there again, standing, watching, waiting. Finally, we spotted something ahead. A cluster of lights, a gas station we hadn't passed before. Relief flooded me so hard I almost laughed. Ben skidded to a stop under the buzzing fluorescence. The attendant, a gray-haired woman in a flannel shirt, barely looked up from her crossword. "You kids look rattled," she drawled. "Car trouble?" We tumbled out, babbling about the campsite, the footprints, the whisper, the figure. She set her pen down, sighed like we were telling her about a stray dog. "You camp out at Pinto Creek?" We all nodded, breathless. She stared at us for a long moment, then shook her head. "That old place has been abandoned since before I was born. Folks who stop there, well, some of them don't come back at all. And the ones who do..." She let the sentence hang. Ben managed a shaky laugh. "That's comforting." She didn't smile. Instead, she handed us a folded scrap of paper. "Take the old service road out back. Don't stop for anything you see or hear. Don't open your windows and don't look in the rear view." We didn't argue. The road she sent us down was little more than 2 ruts through the dust, but somehow it felt right, like we were finally headed away from whatever was following us. None of us spoke the entire drive. We kept our eyes forward, hands gripping knees and door handles. When we finally hit real asphalt again and cell bars blinked back onto our screens, it felt like breaking through the surface after drowning. We never talked about Pinto Creek after that, not even to each other, because deep down we all knew we hadn't imagined it, and we all remembered that last look in the gas station mirror, the glimpse of a pale face pressed against the rear windshield, grinning at us through the dust. We didn't even plan the trip. It was one of those impulsive, let's just get away for the weekend ideas. There were 3 of us crammed into Carter's dusty Jeep, me, my girlfriend Nina, and our friend Luke. We were headed for some tiny town in upstate New York, hoping to find waterfalls and local diners, basically anything that didn't smell like Manhattan. We left way later than we should have. By the time we crossed into Rural Hills, it was almost midnight. Luke had passed out in the back with his headphones on, and Carter was half singing, half yelling to keep himself awake. Then Nina tapped my arm. "Do you see that up ahead?" At first I thought it was just heat ripples on the road, though it was way too cold for that. As we got closer, I realized it was actually smoke, curling up from behind a bend. When we rounded the curve, we nearly ran over it. A car stopped sideways across the road, lights off, one door hanging wide open. Carter slammed the brakes. The Jeep skidded to a stop just a few feet away. "Holy shit, is there someone inside?" Luke said, jolted awake. I grabbed my phone flashlight and stepped out. The smell hit me first, like burnt rubber mixed with something sweet and rotting. Inside the car, there was nobody. The driver's seat was empty, keys still in the ignition. On the passenger side floor was a torn grocery bag, oranges rolling out across the carpet. But what really set me off was the windshield. Smeared across it in thick, greasy handprints was one word: run. Back at the Jeep, I told Carter we needed to call the cops, but of course we had no service, not even a flicker of a bar. "Let's just keep driving," Nina whispered. "We'll call as soon as we hit a signal." So we did. Maybe 5 minutes later, we saw lights in the distance. Relief washed over me. Finally, another car. But as we got closer, I realized it wasn't moving. It was another abandoned car. Same angle across the road, same open door, same words smeared on the windshield. "Run." That's when we heard it. Heavy footsteps crunching across gravel coming from the trees just off the shoulder. Luke leaned out the window, aiming his phone light into the woods. A face looked back. It was horribly pale, mouth slack, eyes wide and glassy. But the thing that terrified me most was how still it was, like someone had pressed pause on a human being. Then, all at once, it charged straight for us. Carter didn't wait for me to tell him to go. He slammed the Jeep into drive, tires spitting gravel, and we shot off so fast I nearly fell into Nina's lap. Behind us, I caught a glimpse of that pale figure lunging onto the road. It was fast, unnaturally fast, and for a second, I thought it might actually catch us. But then it stopped, just stood there, head tilted, watching us disappear into the darkness. Nobody spoke for at least 10 minutes. I think we were all trying to process the same terrifying question. What the hell was that? Luke finally broke the silence. There was something wrong with its eyes. Did you see that? Nina was shaking so badly she had her hands tucked under her thighs to steady them. Why were there 2 cars exactly the same way? The writing. It had to be a warning, right? Carter just kept driving, knuckles white on the steering wheel. "We're getting to a town. Any town. I don't care which. We're not stopping until then." It felt like hours before we saw signs of civilization. A dimly lit gas station on the outskirts of a sleepy hamlet. The pumps were old, the sign above the shop cracked and half lit, but we were so desperate for people that we didn't care. Inside, the cashier was a thin, sunken-eyed guy who didn't even look up from his magazine. Carter tried to sound casual. "Hey man, you seen anybody weird on the road tonight? Like, walking around, maybe messing with cars?" The cashier slowly lifted his eyes, stared at us for a long, uncomfortable beat. Then he pointed at a corkboard on the wall by the door. It was covered in missing person flyers, at least 20 different faces, ages all over the place. Luke took a shaky breath. "What's with all these?" The guy scratched his neck, looking almost bored. "That stretch of road's always been like that. Folks vanish. Sometimes we find their cars, doors wide open. Sometimes we don't find anything at all. I felt my stomach lurch. So why does nobody do anything? The cops? He shrugged. Sheriff doesn't go out there after dark. Neither should you. We didn't buy anything. Just backed out, got in the Jeep and drove straight through to the next county without saying a word. It's been 2 weeks since then. We're all home, trying to act normal, but it's like that road followed us. Carter says he keeps waking up to the sound of footsteps outside his apartment. Nina won't drive at night anymore. Luke swears he saw the pale face in the window of the laundromat across from his place. As for me, I started hearing tapping on my bedroom window at exactly 3:13 every morning. I've never once been brave enough to look. I've never liked long drives at night, but somehow I always end up being the one behind the wheel when it gets dark. There were 4 of us packed into my old Honda Civic, weaving through the mountain backroads of Tennessee on our way to a tiny music festival. My best friend Sam was riding shotgun, DJing with an obnoxious playlist of retro pop songs. In the backseat were his cousin Danny, who'd flown in from Oregon just for this trip, and my girlfriend Leah, who was half asleep with her head against the window. We were already hours off schedule thanks to a late start, so instead of sticking to the highway, Sam's brilliant idea was to take a series of shortcuts. By midnight, we were deep into winding roads lined with towering pine trees. The GPS stopped working entirely. No service bars, no directions. At first, it was just annoying. Then things started to feel off. I noticed we hadn't seen another car in at least 30 minutes. No houses, no mailboxes, not even a stray light in the distance. Danny was the first to break the uneasy silence. Why is it getting so foggy? Look, she was right. A dense, almost milky fog was pouring in across the road, swallowing the forest. My headlights seemed to make it worse, casting harsh beams that stretched into nothing. That's when we saw it. A sign half hidden by weeds and nailed crookedly to a splintered post. Welcome to Hollow's Rest. None of us had ever heard of it. The name alone sent a weird chill up my spine, but turning around didn't feel like an option. The road was narrow and lined with deep ditches, so we kept going, hoping we'd pop out onto a main road eventually. Not even 5 minutes later, Leah sat up straight and grabbed my arm. Stop. Stop the car. I slammed the brakes. Ahead, barely visible through the swirling fog, stood what looked like an old man. He was wearing a floppy hat and a dirty coat, just standing in the middle of the road, facing away from us. I honked. He didn't move. Sam leaned out the window and shouted, "Hey, you okay, man?" Slowly, the figure turned. His face was wrong. The eyes seemed sunken so deep they were nothing but dark holes, and the mouth twisted in a way that didn't make sense, stretched unnaturally wide. Then he began to walk toward us. I didn't wait to see what he wanted. I jammed the car into reverse so fast we nearly ended up in the ditch. Leah was sobbing. Danny was muttering something over and over about how his face didn't look human. When I finally found enough room to spin the car around, I gunned it back the way we came. Only, after maybe 10 minutes of driving, we passed the same crooked sign. Welcome to Hollow's Rest. The second time we passed that Welcome to Hollow's Rest sign, something inside me snapped. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles ached. Leah was whispering prayers. Danny just kept rocking back and forth. Sam tried to sound brave. Maybe it's just a loop road. We missed a turn, that's all. But even he didn't believe it. I slowed down, searching for any driveway or trail we could take to break the cycle. That's when Danny pointed out a narrow dirt lane branching off to the right. No signs, no tire tracks, just raw mud and low-hanging branches. Anything was better than driving in circles, so I took it. The lane twisted through dense pines for what felt like forever, finally opening into a clearing. There stood an old 2-story house with peeling white paint and a collapsed porch. It was completely dark, except for a single lantern glowing in an upstairs window. "Who the hell would be living out here?" Sam whispered. "I don't care. Maybe they have a phone," Leah said, already fumbling for the door handle. I didn't want any of us going near it. But I was too tired, too scared, and too desperate to argue. We approached slowly, crunching over gravel. Up close, the place was worse, windows boarded haphazardly. the front door hanging half open. From inside came a low, steady sound, like someone humming. "Hello?" I called. My voice cracked embarrassingly. The humming stopped. For a long moment there was nothing. Then, from somewhere deep in the house, a woman's voice answered, "You're late." We all froze. I couldn't even process what that meant. Sam shone his phone flashlight inside. The beam caught old wallpaper, a hallway choked with debris, and what looked like muddy footprints leading away from the door, deeper into the house. Before we could react, there was a creak above us. We all looked up just in time to see a face staring down from the broken second-story railing. It was the same old man from the road, the sunken eyes, the twisted mouth. But now he was grinning, and he wasn't alone. Behind him, shapes began to appear. Figures that looked only half-formed, their bodies wavering in the dim light, like smoke trying to be human. I grabbed Leah's hand and bolted. Danny and Sam were right behind us. We didn't stop running until we were back at the car, lungs burning. I jammed the key in, praying it would start. It did, on the first try. We tore down the dirt lane back onto the main road. This time, mercifully, we didn't see the sign. The fog cleared as abruptly as it had come. Within half an hour, we found ourselves on a familiar stretch of highway. No one spoke the entire drive to the motel we finally collapsed at. The next morning, curious, or maybe stupid, we tried to find Hollow's Rest on Google Maps. Nothing came up, not even a hint. When we drove the same route in daylight a week later, there was no dirt lane, no clearing, no old house, just endless pine trees. We don't talk about it anymore. But sometimes I catch Leah staring out the window at night, flinching at shadows. Sometimes, if it's very late and the world is quiet, I swear I can hear humming just outside my door.